I care about people. I care about people.
I care about making the world a better
I
place.
care about my family.
Fellow Americans. I care about music, care about our job prospects.
I care about peace, teaching youth, my kids, my husband.
Welfare of my fellow man.
Health.
I want the truth to come out.
Hey, greetings, class. Little intro music, Kid Rock. Let's enjoy a couple seconds.
Day by day, my life gets colder. My eyes go dim as I get older. Pieces, bloody and bruised. I feel so helpless and confused. 'Cause I hear screaming on the left, yelling on the right. I'm sitting in the middle trying to live my life. 'Cause I can't stop the war. Shelter homeless, feed the poor.
Hey, that is a really powerful song if you've never heard it. There's the link at the bottom of this page. Go check it out. I think you'll be impressed whether you're a Kid Rock fan or not. So we're going to cover civil rights over the next 2 weeks. Today is week 4, which is a asynchronous week, and then next week, week 5, a live class. So we'll get this here to work. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about reparations and about some of the changes in policy in regards to civil rights. I really love this quote from Coates. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separation but equal, 35 years of racist housing policies. America will never be whole. And the couple of things for you to take in this week in readings, hopefully you listen to the very short YouTube video of his testimony in regards to reparations. And Senate leader here on the right says America should not be held liable for something that happened 150 years ago. Wow, that statement blows my mind, because Coates goes on to explain we still follow treaties that are over 100 years old. So they hold us accountable. So why shouldn't we hold administration accountable? So it's a great question. But this whole issue of reparations is certainly not new. Japanese Americans were held, taken away. Their homes were taken away during World War II. They were put in internment camps. If you've never seen this book, it's a graphic novel called, let me hold it up here, They Called Us Enemy. It is by George Takei, who is, very famous for his role in Star Trek. He, as a young boy, was in an internment camp. I had a chance to hear him speak live. It was a very powerful lecture. But there was reparations here, and $1.6 billion was paid out to Japanese Americans who had been interned. And Native Americans, they even made an attempt at this, and here you see President signing a law into order that would give Native Americans a payout. However, it was about $1,000 in 1978. And then this commission was dissolved. Americans did not get the money that was awarded to them. They were seen as not competent, and it was too complicated to figure out what reparations were really worth. So we know the Civil Rights Act of 1964, very powerful legislation. It outlawed segregation. It encouraged school desegregation. So I had a chance to visit the Orphan Train Museum in Concordia, Kansas. While I was there, the curator said, "Are you going to go to the POW camp, POW museum?" And I didn't know what she was talking about. And she shared that in 1943 to 1945, there were 4,000 German soldiers as POWs in Concordia, Kansas. In fact, there were multiple locations for POWs in Kansas, not just Concordia. I didn't know either one of these pieces of data. So I went to the museum to check it out and was stunned at what I learned. In 1943 to 1945 in Concordia, there were 4,000 German soldiers, about 1,500 officers and 2,500 enlisted, and they were from the campaign in North Africa. So while they were here, they were allowed to farm because the young men that would normally be farming were overseas. They were held in Concordia, Kansas, and other locations in Kansas because if they escaped, they had nowhere to go. Most German soldiers had no idea how large the United States was. So it's not like if they escaped, they could get back on the front lines and we'd have to refight them. So they were treated pretty well. They were paid a wage. In fact, they were treated so well that many of the soldiers were earned college credits. The University of Kansas sent professors to the POW camps to teach college credit courses. In fact, a couple soldiers left their POW camps with a degree. So we think about that for a moment. That sounds nice, but at the same time that's happening, what was happening to Japanese Americans? Their houses were taken from them, their jobs, their income, their bank accounts. But we were educating German prisoners of war. And wait, let's go one step farther. What about the Black American GI soldiers that were fighting on the front line in World War II? They couldn't even walk in the front door of the mess hall. But we were educating white Caucasian German soldiers, treating them better than the Black soldiers that were fighting for our country and the Japanese Americans whose homes that we took. So the Civil Rights Act in 1964 began to address some really serious problems, including voter registration and segregation. Again, Black soldiers couldn't walk in the front door of a mess hall. Also, the law empowered agencies to withhold funds from programs that practice segregation. And it began equal opportunity for employment. But man, do we have a long way to go, even in 2020. Then came affirmative action. Affirmative action was a tool for reducing discrimination. Did it work? In Kansas City, Troost is a really interesting dividing line of race in Kansas City. Those on the east side of Troost were low economic, were Black Americans. Those on the west side of Troost were Caucasian, educated, higher income. And the dividing line was put in place on purpose. It wasn't an accident. As the whites left the inner city, the Blacks were forced to stay behind, and Troost became that dividing line. So affirmative action is really interesting. So it's very much been a process of a dance. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And we continue to experience discrimination, whether it's through policing, whether it's through jobs, whether it's through education. And even though laws are in place, and at times it feels like it gets a little bit better, in reality, does it really get better? Is it really working? So I came across a couple articles, and there's 2 links here that I've shared with you. Please check them out. Does diversity training work? We saw recently that in regards to the civil unrest, President Trump has wrote an order stopping diversity training in the federal government. So this is really interesting. The bottom line is that forced diversity training doesn't work. If you're on the fence about an issue, whether it's, gay and lesbian rights or civil rights or racial issues or sexuality issues or gender issues, forcing you to go to a training you're not going to have one of those aha moments where you go, oh my gosh, I've been so wrong all these years, and you hop off the fence. So in 2007, I'd been in some training, and I came back with my coworkers while I was at the Gillis Center for Children. And we all learned that a child in foster care had committed suicide. They had hung themselves. What had occurred was this. The child was having some sexuality identification struggles, they told their worker, and their worker said, "Oh, it's just a phase, you'll grow out of this." This child felt so alone, so unsupported, unvalidated, that they chose to hang themselves in the closet of their foster home. Terrible story. So how did child welfare agencies in Kansas City respond? Forced trainings. Cornerstones of Care went out and got a $65,000 grant to hire a person for 2 years to do trainings. So as I was pulled into supervision with my boss, who was the CEO of Gillis, I was informed that all of my staff have to go to these mandatory trainings. And I said to my supervisor, I said, I will pass that information on to my staff, but I'm not going to mandate that they go. If they want to go, I will encourage them to go. I will make arrangements for them to go, but mandatory trainings do not work. And I'll never forget what occurred next. My supervisor sat back in her chair and said, "What do you mean you won't force them to go?" And I said, "Mandatory trainings don't work. The research is very supportive on this." I said to her, "In fact, I'm not going to go." And she said, "You're not going to go?" I said, "No, I don't need to go." And she, again, sat back and she said, "Are you homophobic?" And I said, "No, I'm not homophobic." Unfortunately, what that meant was my boss didn't really know me that well, and I needed to do a better job helping her understand my lens. My dad's an interior designer. My mom was an artist of Hallmark cards. I grew up exposed to gay and lesbians as a little boy before gay and lesbians were coming out in the 1960s and 1970s. They were my uncles and my aunts, family friends. So no, I'm not homophobic, but I know that forced trainings don't work. And she said, "Well, what do you propose?" And I said, "Well, let's do something that has some sustainability, because forced trainings also aren't sustainable. At the end of that $65,000 grant, what are we left with? And given the leave, the amount of time that people come to Cornerstones and leave, we'll train them and they'll leave, and then we'll have a bunch of staff that aren't trained, and we run out of money. It's not sustainable. Let's create a town hall. Let's create a committee. Let's invite some former youth that are gay and lesbian that experience what was it like for them in residential care when they were invalidated in regards to their sexuality and their questions. Let's create a sustainable committee and a process, and create an incentive to respect diversity and include all in that process." And the CEO sat back. She said, "Well, that's well and good, but right now, all your staff need to go to a mandatory training." And I realized at that point, I was not going to win that battle. So unfortunately, these mandatory trainings, they're not beneficial. They haven't improved, equality. It continues to be a problem. So one of this, we're in this dance, 3 steps back instead of 3 steps forward. So, and frequently they make things worse. They create dividing lines. At the Gillis Center, I'll share with you kind of an ugly truth. Administration building was called the White House, not because it resembled the White House, but because all of the administrators in the building were white. They didn't represent the clients that were being served by the population. So the trainings didn't make things better. It just reiterated the dividing lines that were already in place. Now, the Code of Ethics has done some things and made some changes. In the fall of 2017 that went into effect in 2018, we saw a shift in the Code of Ethics in regards to cultural competence. It moved from cultural competence to cultural awareness. I think this was a really powerful move. This is a strengths perspective move. It is a move designed to really consider, diversity for all, because we can't be culturally competent in all cultures, right? In fact, not everybody that's white has the same culture. Not everybody that's Black has the same culture. Not every Latino has the same culture. But we can be aware and respect the differences around us. So right out of the Code of Ethics, we see some things here, some changes. We're focusing on gender identity and expression, age, marital status, political belief, religion, immigration status, that's new, mental or physical ability. It used to be the word disability, which is not strengths driven. Social workers who provide electronic social work services should be aware of cultural and socioeconomic differences. So right there, our code really supports the fact that we need to be aware rather than being focused on competence and to challenge things that when we see them. So what is the next step? Well, we have to constantly challenge, we have to be aware, and we have to identify what these root causes are, these norms. What holds these problems in place? That's a challenge. So overall, we must constantly scrutinize each new piece of proposed policy. We have to constantly ask hard questions and be willing to ask hard questions. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So pop quiz, true or false? Does social denial work? And the answer is, it does not work. If we pretend that it's not there, the problem doesn't go away because we know this problem still exists. We know that there are still kids separated from their families, Latino kids. They're living in cages in a variety of places around the United States. In fact, they looked at opening a facility in Kansas City. And this is deplorable. This is terrible. What is a foil blanket? What is this? This isn't fake news. This is a problem. And denial of responsibility and denial of awareness will not solve the problem. So, hey guys, thank you for a great week 5. I hope you enjoy the readings, the videos, and carry on with yourselves.
I can't walk on water. I can't save your sons and daughters. Well, I can change the world and make things fair. The least that I can do is care.
It's time we all care a little bit more. Thanks, guys, for having a great class. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.